What's up, you beautiful people? It's Harrison here, coming at you from the beautiful Austin, Texas on this lovely Saturday afternoon in my backyard. And today I'm going to be talking to you about healing from narcissistic abuse. Now, if there were one essential first step to beginning your healing journey, it would be to acknowledge the abuse and the trauma that you have endured and likely are still enduring if you're watching this video. I, like many people, had a very unrefined concept and definition of trauma before I experienced the narcissistic abusive cycle. I thought that trauma was something experienced by war veterans or survivors of major natural disasters. A lot of times as kids we're told, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Especially in my case, as a man, I was raised to disregard my emotions and disregard the effect that people's words could have on me. You need to acknowledge the fact that what you experienced was more than just unflattering words. It was a meticulous form of psychological turmoil and manipulation that has a very lasting effect on the brain and the body. One book I heavily recommend and will likely be talking about later on this channel is The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. This book has shed a lot of light on the way that trauma affects the way that we live our lives and the way that we form relationships with others. And more importantly, how we form a relationship with ourselves. Because immediately after you acknowledge the trauma and the abuse that you have suffered, it's good to introspect. Spend time reflecting on the vulnerabilities that the narcissist likely targeted. Narcissists target a specific kind of person. A lot of times, this is someone who has already suffered narcissistic abuse or other types of abuse in their life. Because these people are extremely vulnerable and they have been habituated to this kind of manipulative behavior. So they're likely to turn a blind eye when the narcissist does something self-serving or wrong, conniving, meticulous. I know that was certainly the case with me. But in a more broad sense, the narcissist is looking for someone who has empathy without boundaries. Think about that. Empathy without boundaries. One very important quote that I have learned throughout the healing process of narcissistic abuse is empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. Think about that one. Empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. Because the narcissist takes advantage of people who are willing to forgive deviant behavior at the cost of their own sense of self. They will force you to clip your wings. They will force you to erode your sense of self ever so slowly and discard your own values and your own morals to submit to their sick and selfish desires. So, the most important part of healing from narcissistic abuse is to work on setting healthier boundaries. And furthermore, learn how to continue expressing empathy with healthier boundaries in place. The most difficult part of the healing process for me was learning to trust myself again. I am usually a very empathetic, open, accepting person. I don't really have too much of an issue trusting others or letting others in. I definitely love, the company of others and, keeping good people in my life. And I always try to see the good in people. So that wasn't as big of a problem for me. I'm not going to lie to you. It certainly still was a problem, because, the narcissistic abuse leaves you very paranoid and distrustful. But I think the more difficult challenge was learning to trust myself again, because the narcissist erodes your sense of self to such an insidious degree that you kind of forget who you are after a certain point. You really do forget what you stand for. And you might even start to question whether or not you really are a good person. No matter how many people tell you, you will not believe it. That certainly was the case for me. I felt an impending sense of guilt of, in regards to how I might have acted under the guise of narcissistic abuse, because it turned me into a very jaded person. And I was constantly terrified that it might have turned me into just as malicious and conniving of a person as my narcissists were. So learning how to trust yourself and learning to align with your own values again is essential to the healing process. That is really how you can begin to set a healthier path in place in the future as you move forward away from the narcissistic relationship. After you go no contact, the key is to realign yourself with your authentic morals, values, and empathy, because these are what the narcissist targeted and what the narcissist exploited during the narcissistic abusive cycle. Your authenticity and your empathy is the strongest weapon against the narcissist. Realign yourself with that. It is very easy to be washed up in the throes of self-destruction, the throes of hedonism that the narcissist likely introduced you to and likely involved you in during the narcissistic abusive cycle. Don't let yourself indulge in these self-destructive and hedonistic behaviors much further. Take a step back, introspect, and reevaluate your values. Remember that any failure is just what the narcissist wants to see. The narcissist wants to paint you as the unhinged one. And don't get me wrong, narcissism is quite insanity-inducing if you let it corrode your mind for too long. If you let it corrupt your mind for too long, it is quite insanity-inducing. But when you feel yourself spiraling into that delusion and that insanity again, take a step back and reevaluate. Don't start lashing out and expressing your rage and letting your spite and rage get the better of you. That is exactly what the narcissist wants to see, because it further perpetuates their own narrative of superiority. You don't want that to happen. Recenter yourself and align with your own morals, values, and empathy. Your own authentic self. Remember, empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. I hope this video helped you guys. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Harrison. Peace.